Well, certainly a lot better than the present situation. I'm sure you've been over these facts many, many times, but they're worth repeating because I think it puts in perspective for people. There are some 10 million children that die every year under the age of 5, 30,000 a day. About 4 million of those 10 million die within the first 4 weeks of life. So it's a pretty staggering number when you think about that. 30,000 infants a day, or children a day, dying, many of them, of course, just days old. And this is a global challenge, and obviously the United States, with its great wealth and potential, and I think the kind of country we think we are as well, need to be stepping up and doing more. I'm a very good friend of Bono's. We've been good friends. I've worked with him on some of the international debt relief issues over the years. Become good friends. Bobby Shriver, who works very closely with Bono, is actively involved in our campaign for the presidency, and I'm honored, involved and very supportive and behind the One campaign, making a difference. So we need to do some things. I'm already involved in it. In fact, I'm not waiting until the election here. As you may know, I don't know if you know this, and how to introduce the Global Child Survival Act with the One campaign, in fact, is the author of it, putting $1.6 billion to work immediately to deal with newborns and mothers and infants and so forth, to try and cut into that number. We think with that number, if we get that number up globally with our 1.6 billion, up to 5 billion, as much as maybe a third or two-thirds of that 4 million, those lives could be saved. Just with some very basic efforts here, we could save that many lives a year if we could get a $5 billion commitment globally in that percentage. Secondly, the 150 accounts. I've spent 26 years in the Foreign Relations Committee. I'm also very involved in children's issues at home. I started the Children's Caucus in the Senate 26 years ago, authored the Family Medical Leave Act, the first child care legislation, infant screening, premature births, autism, pharmaceutical drugs for kids, medical devices, Head Start programs, after school. I've just done a lot over the years on these issues, so this is not about memorizing a briefing book or cramming for it. I spent a lot of time on these questions, both at home and abroad. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the 1960s in Latin America, near the Haitian border in the Dominican Republic. Paul Farmer is a good friend of mine. I was with him in Boston a few weeks ago, talking about what he's doing in Rwanda and still doing in Haiti, where I spent a great deal of time over the years dealing with global poverty issues. The whole effort with the Millennium Challenge Corporation is certainly we back that and support that effort account. The emergency relief on AIDS is something. One thing George Bush has done that I commend him for. It's not as much as we ought to be doing, but they have done better than I thought they would do on this effort. Thank to Bono, by the way. I think he had a lot of influence on the president doing that. The 150 account, which you don't get alone, obviously Congress has got to agree with you on these issues. But right now we're doing about $20 billion in sub-Saharan Africa. I've been asked a lot of times at various forums and here in Iowa and New Hampshire, how much would I exactly commit to that account? I know people would like to double that account if they could. I try to be very honest with people on these things here. The easiest thing to say here with a One campaign is I'd double that number. We've got a massive fiscal problem this administration has left us. They've accumulated more debt in 6 years than 42 previous administrations combined in the history of our country. So on January 20th, 2009, there is a stack of problems growing by the hour, not the least of which is the fiscal mess of this country. So while my intentions and desires would love to sit here today and tell you with absolute certainty I'd double the 150 account within the first 4 years of my administration, I can't make that commitment. I just don't know all the other massive problems I'm going to be facing here. I know that we could do a lot better. I'm vehemently opposed to this continuation of the war in Iraq. Here, the only Democrat to have voted last time just to stop the funding in the Senate altogether. We're spending $10 billion a month, $2 billion a week. Obviously, think of the damage we're doing there to our country's safety, security, our vulnerability, and our isolation. So clearly stopping that, doing some other things that would put us on a sounder footing fiscally is something that I'll be trying to achieve. And whatever more I can do, I will try and do. But I can't sit here today and tell you absolutely what I'm going to be able to do without knowing how many more problems I'm going to be facing fiscally. But I have a record of 26 years of working at these issues here. I'm the one who worked out the arrangements to settle the civil wars in Nicaragua and El Salvador back in the 1980s. Here, I have a long-standing involvement on these questions. And I will do everything I can, living up to a continuous record of proven results and making a difference in people's lives.